Today we're making upside down peach cake. We're using an old-fashioned hot milk cake for the batter to this upside down peach cake. The hot milk cake is a very tender crumbed, moist and delicious vanilla cake. It gets its tenderness because we're heating milk and our butter, and we pour that in our batter at the last minute, and that heats up that baking powder and gives it a little jolt, and it gives it a wonderful lift and a wonderful tender crumb. We're using a shiny 9-inch round cake pan. You can certainly use an 8-inch round pan or a square pan. But if you use a smaller diameter, just remember to increase the cooking time by about 4 or 5 minutes. Our first step is to go ahead and prepare our peaches and lay them in the bottom of our pan. We're going to melt 1/2 stick or 1/4 cup of butter. I have my oven preheating to 375. I'm going to go ahead and put this 1/2 stick of butter in my pan. And I'm just going to set this in the oven while it's preheating so that it melts. Now I let my butter brown, which means you just cook it and it sizzles just a bit until there's a few brown specks and it smells kind of nutty. We're adding 1/2 cup of firmly packed brown sugar, and I'm using the light brown sugar, light or dark. I'm just going to press this brown sugar in until it's absorbed all that butter. I'm sprinkling cinnamon over this mixture. I want a generous sprinkling of cinnamon on here because I think peaches and cinnamon go together like peas and carrots. We're using 2 cups of sliced and peeled peaches, and we're just going to lay these around, and I put them in concentric circles. This recipe could also be made with frozen peaches. Just be sure to drain them well. Now these are relatively small peaches, and it took about 5 of them. And this is just the right amount. I'm going to swap out that little one and eat it. I have got 2 slices left. Oh, yummy, yummy, yummy. We just have 3 steps to making the batter. We're going to combine 1 cup of flour with a teaspoon of baking powder. With an old-fashioned hot milk cake, we don't cream together our butter and sugar. We're going to beat our eggs and then gradually add the sugar to it. And then we are going to combine the flour, and then the last step is to pour in some hot milk with melted butter. We're going to beat 2 eggs, and these eggs need to be at room temperature. We're beating these eggs for about 5 minutes until they're lemon colored and very thick. So that's been just about 5 minutes, and you see how thick we've gotten our eggs. It's like soft peaks. So that's a very important step. Go full 5 minutes, and your eggs need to be room temperature. And now we're adding 1 cup of sugar. We're going to gradually add our sugar, beating on medium to high speed for about 2 minutes in total. Going to be such a tender and airy and light crumb on this cake. And for flavoring, we're adding 1 teaspoon of vanilla. And we're just going to stir this vanilla in for a few seconds. And now we're going to add our flour. I add about half of it, and we are just going to stir it in. Now the other half. Our last step is to heat our milk and butter. So to a small saucepan, we're adding 1/2 cup of milk. And I'm using half and half. I always use half and half in my recipes. With 1/2 stick or 1/4 cup of butter. I'm going to place this over medium heat on the stovetop until the butter melts and there are bubbles forming around the outside edge of the milk. So we're just basically scalding the milk. We don't want this to boil. So we're just getting this hot. And when we add this to our batter, that heat is going to activate our baking powder and give it a little burst. And this is going right into the oven with that little burst of heat, and it is going to rise beautifully. And give that a swirl to combine the melted butter and the milk. And if you did happen to overheat your milk, just make sure you didn't burn it and maybe let it cool just a bit. Slowly pour this into our batter. It's already getting a heavenly smell. And now we just pour this over our peaches. This is going into a 375-degree oven on the middle rack for about 30 minutes. When this cake starts cooking, you will see the batter bubble up quite a bit. If you're looking through the glass, let's stick our toothpick in. And I think we are ready. No wet batter. We are now going to take a butter knife around the outside edge and separate this cake from the pan. When our brown sugar and butter start to cool, they're going to harden a little bit and possibly seal this cake to the pan. I have never used parchment paper when I've made this cake, and I've never greased the sides. I have a platter that this cake fits in perfectly and flat. You can use a baking sheet, you could use a pizza pan, use whatever plate you have, and you're going to lay that on top. Make sure you're grabbing your cake pan and your platter with your oven mitt and flip it. Just like that. This cake's going to sit for 5 minutes before we remove the pan because we want all of that butter that's in the bottom of the pan to come out of the pan on top of the cake. And let's see what we've got. Oh, gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous. I'm just going to lay that peach back in place. Slide those two up. Now that is a beautiful cake. See the inside of our pan? The cook gets that little yummy piece. This cake is best served warm. Let it sit about 30 minutes. You can refrigerate it and serve it the next day. Bring it out about a half an hour before you plan to serve it. The crumb on this cake is just so tender and it's so moist. It's a cross between a pound cake and a sponge cake.